This is The Guardian.
Hello, I'm Faye Carruthers and welcome to The Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Chelsea turn on their five-star quality while Arsenal start life after Jonas with a win. Manchester City come from behind to go top of the table and Leicester beat Everton to steal their first win of the season. We'll speak exclusively to the FA's Women's Technical Director, Kate Cossington, ahead of the international break, look back at the week's Champions League action, plus we'll take your questions. And that's today's Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Suzanne Wrack, planes, trains and automobiles. You've had some week, haven't you?
Yeah, it was more like trains in 21 hours of travel in 36 hours to get to the FC20 game, which felt like a mistake as I was doing it, but was actually a really enjoyable game to cover. Nice stadium, really nice area. The Dutch are just really nice as well, which helps. Just really lovely people. Yeah, so tiring, but worth it.
Tom Garry, I loved your article on Lauren James this week.
Hello, Faye. It's so nice to speak to you. Yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing for England-Germany at Wembley. What a week we've got ahead.
Chris Paouros, hello. A brilliant article on safety for women who go to men's football. Wish you didn't have to have written about it. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I haven't got stories of trains or stories of SGP. I just did a nice day's work yesterday, and then I've got a few more days' work before going to Wembley on Friday.
By the way, just to let you know, we've got an exclusive interview with the FA's Women's Technical Director, Kate Cossington, coming up later in the pod. So, a brilliant weekend of football culminated in a blockbuster at Kings Meadow. 7 goals, 2 potential goals of the season by Johanna Warner and some refereeing controversy. It finished Chelsea 5, Tottenham 2. Sonia Bonpastor's side maintained their unbeaten start to the campaign. Maika Hamano opened the scoring for Chelsea before Amanda Nilden levelled for Spurs in controversial circumstances and then went and scored an own goal as well. Ritten Cannerid bagged 2 with Sandy Baltimore also on the score sheet before Evelina Summanen scored a consolation late on. So another win for Chelsea, Susie, something that Sonia Bonpastor is getting very well accustomed to in her new role. What did you make of their performance?
Yeah, I mean, attacking wise, obviously brilliantly solid. Johanna Warner just on fire this season, but I think there is still defensive worries, right? This is the 4th game in a row that they've conceded, and quite sloppily as well. When we were out in the Netherlands, I asked Sonia about it, and she said, yeah, it is concerning. As a defender, I'm not happy with us. As a former defender, I'm not happy with us not keeping clean sheets. It's something we're working on. And I've asked her a sort of similar question after every single sort of post-match press conference when I've been to their games in recent weeks. And it's sort of like we're very conscious of this. We are concerned about it. We're working on it. But we're not really seeing results of that work yet, which I think is maybe slightly concerning. I mean, the bonus is that they're so strong that they're sort of, it doesn't matter at the moment, but it could prove costly further down the line if they get a few injuries, when they come up against tougher teams. I think that's when it could start to cause problems. That said, it's they're giving themselves the time to be able to work on that stuff by just scoring more. But yeah, obviously really, really, you can't complain about the start to the season. But yeah, if there's one little kind of area that I'm still slightly concerned about for them, it's that.
Yeah, let's talk about that moment of controversy, shall we? Amanda Nilden's equaliser. Her shot was parried on the line by Hannah Hampton, bounced backwards, and the Chelsea keeper insisted that she reclaim possession before it had crossed the line. The assistant referee actually gave the goal immediately, but replays were inconclusive and showed he wasn't in line with play. Luckily for the officials, though, it didn't make much difference to the result, Chris. But what do you make of it? Does it kind of ramp up calls for the league to utilise the available technology again?
Well, we were down the other end, so we did exactly what Amanda Nilden did, which was there he is, she's caught the ball, and then suddenly the whistle went. So we were delighted, obviously. As a fan of the opposition, it's hilarious that happens at Kings Meadow. Everybody's in absolute uproar. But in seriousness, I think goal line technology I'm assuming it's cheaper than it was to implement now than it would have been when it started in the Premier League. And it's the one thing that you can have in football where basically it's a definitive answer. You know, everything else, even semi-automated offsides, anything about VAR, you're still making decisions. You're still making human decisions about something. Whereas whether the ball has crossed the line or not, you could just see it. You know, you've got your aerial view. If, you know, the ball bounces, you know, it looked to me afterwards, but, you know, obviously I'm going to be thinking the other way, that it probably did backspin all the way in. And to, you know, if you see where Hannah Hampton's hands were. But I guess that's kind of not the point, because, you know, to the point that Susie was just making about sort of later down the line for Chelsea, it didn't matter in the end. But say we had managed to hold, you know, to keep them to a draw, that could have been very, very costly. And I think back to Pedro Mendes scoring at Old Trafford back in whenever it was, where it obviously went over the line and it wasn't called. And that season Spurs could have got into the Champions League, and I think we missed out by 1 point. And so you really rue that goal not going over the, you know, that not being called. And that was a long time ago in men's football. So I think, given sort of what's at stake and how you're trying to grow the game, that from a goal line, it seems a bit of a no-brainer now, I think.
Johanna Warner, one of the stars of the season so far. Her manager, full of praise for her after the game. Again, we've waxed lyrical about her on the pod on many times. I hope she's going to grow again. She had some great goals and her performance was really high, said Sonia Bonpastor. I think she's confident right now on the pitch, understands exactly what I expect from her, good chemistry with her teammates, and I think she's really helping the team to perform and get good results. I mean, she is an incredible player, Tom, but how much impact is she having on this Chelsea side?
Well, yeah, if you'd asked me at the start of the season who, after 5 games, would be my player of the season, I don't think I would have said Ritten Cannerid, but I can't think of how we can. I don't think it's fair to give it to anyone else at the moment. I think she's been absolutely sublime. I think she's creating so many more sort of key moments in front of goal that I don't think we really saw from her before. I think we've seen her developing well in the last couple of years, but this seems like she's been ready to step up to that next level of, like, I'm a senior player. I'm going to grab games by the scruff of the neck, and I'm going to make things happen. And got a lovely confidence about her game at the moment. Yeah, she's joint top of the goal scoring charts. She's also very high up on the assist chart with her 2 assists for the season as well. And I think that in the league, that is, and I think that it's almost like Chelsea have upgraded on a player. So yeah, really important. I wonder if I could just go back to the goal line technology debate just briefly, if you'll forgive me going off script, because I have total sympathy for that goal. Shouldn't have been given for multiple, as we've kind of discussed, for multiple reasons, because I don't think the assistant can be sure, and we clearly don't have the angles. And I would love to see goal line technology come in straight away, but there's definitely a problem with some of the stadiums in use in the league to implement that. I was having a conversation with someone about this yesterday, and I'm sure there are people who would love to kind of bring it in mandatory, but then you do bring in challenges. Do you tell Everton, I'm sorry, you cannot use Walton Hall Park anymore because you haven't got a stand high enough to put in the infrastructure for the technology that does the cameras? I'm not even sure whether Kings Meadow is a high enough state. Bournemouth, I know, also don't use it for the league games anymore, but these smaller grounds do have complications with putting in their technology. So and it costs money as well. Now, I would love to see it come in, but I think it's not quite as simple. Would you then have somebody like I don't know, London City Lionesses, if they got promoted, would Bromley not be viable as a WSL ground? I think we perhaps just need to remember that there are things that hold back the development that we all want to see. We all want to see goal line technology. I think we'd all like to see that, but it's not quite as simple. Maybe it can be something that can force more teams into the bigger stadiums, in the way that the Champions League's regulations did for needing things like some of the knockout rounds needing better regs for these things, can force them into the big grounds. Maybe that's something that can help drive it, but I think it's not quite as simple. You're not going to relegate Everton because they can't have goal line technology. I think that I'm sympathising with Chelsea, but hopefully that adds a little bit of maybe context as to why these things haven't been brought in like 5 years ago.
Chris, Laurie's Fair Blues has asked us on X, is Johanna Ritten Cannerid the best winger in the world right now? What say you?
I mean, it was painful. She absolutely ran riot down that wing, and it was actually a privilege to watch her play like that in person. I hate to say it, but you know, by the end of it, we were just sat there going, "Isn't she tired yet?" Because she was absolutely unbelievable. And you know, as I said, we were down the other end when she scored that goal, but you could see that something like how she positioned herself to do it. And I watched it again and again and again because it was like an incredible goal. Both of them were pretty good, to be fair, but you know, the one where she's sort of, you know, volleying in midair was incredible. So yes, I think she probably is. And I mean, I'm sort of disappointed because I had her in my fantasy football team the first week and thought, oh no, I'll just swap her for Guru Wrighton. That was dumb. I've swapped her back in now, so maybe that'll give her the kiss of death. I don't know. So,
Susie, it's 4 wins from 4 for Chelsea in the league now. They're second to Manchester City going into the international break, but they do have a game in hand. Has their start surprised you, given all the changes over the summer?
Yes and no, in that 99% of teams you would expect like some kind of impact of the turnover of players on that scale and a new manager and like an almost entirely new coaching staff as well, right? You would expect some kind of impact on results, some sort of teething problem somewhere. They've got these defensive issues that I mentioned earlier that I think, you know, do need ironing out, but they've maintained Emma Hayes' ability to sort of play through transition and be successful despite transitioning a team. Like, I think that, you know, maybe Paul Green is a big part of like helping, you know, continue that legacy. Obviously, they've done a lot of the summer work already. Emma spent a lot of time sort of prepping some of those younger players for first team football last season. For a new manager, she really, like, you know, I think like she really wanted to leave that team in a better place than it was. So, you know, you saw the likes of Mike Camano and, you know, Gabby Nunes and stuff getting minutes where maybe they wouldn't have done if she was going to be there sort of another season, I reckon. But yeah, so I think there was like a lot of work done to make sure that there was a squad of players really ready to play first team football and be rotated in and out, and that's given them the continuation of this incredible ability to just maintain winning despite all of those like transition issues that a club goes through at any point in its time, which is incredible, really. Like, I can't think of teams that in men's football that have really been able to do that entirely, like on such a consistent basis.
Yeah, Tottenham have just had that one victory on the opening day of the season against Crystal Palace. Chris, I know you're desperate to talk about Tottenham, but how do you assess what's going on there at the minute? Are you worried in any way?
I'm not actually, because we've played well. And, you know, I think what we've come to is that there was sort of, you know, like how he wants to play, and you can see he wants to play out from the back. You want to kind of keep possession. You want to sort of build things up, you know, that whole sort of, you know, pressing, etc. And last season there was a bit more pragmatism. There seems to be a little less pragmatism this time. He just wants to play how he plays. And if I think about yesterday, actually in the first half, we went Sunday, I should say, we went toe to toe with them actually. And, you know, the goal was a fluke, sure, but nonetheless, we sort of didn't deserve to go in 2-1 down. And I think if we'd managed to go in with a draw, it might have been a bit different. But actually, I was a bit frustrated, and I know we've talked about this many times before, with the quality of officiating. Because actually, every time Jess Naz got the ball, she got pulled down. Arguably, Sondi Baltimore should have been sent off, because it looked to me like she was the last player, and she pulled down Jess Naz when she was through on goal. I mean, it was just in front of the halfway line, but nonetheless, we know that Jess has got the ability to, you know, to do something from there. And then there were a couple of other instances where there were like 3 throwing calls in a row that just went the wrong way. And even the players were like, what are you doing? I don't understand. And then, you know, a goal kick when it should have been a corner. So really simple things. And so there's something there about, you know, you've got full-time athletes that the officials, I don't blame the officials, right? And actually it didn't matter for the result. But if you've got full-time athletes, you need to have full-time officials that can keep up with them. So I was a bit frustrated by that. And I appreciate our defence. It's really weird because we've arguably Spurs have shored up the defence, but are leaking more goals than ever. I don't quite understand how that's working yet. Because, I mean, Claire Hunt is an absolute sort of, a terrific defender. But I think there's something going on the left there, that whoever we've played on the left, that's where we get skinned. I mean, you saw what Johanna Warner did. And I appreciate that our defence has been leaky, but Molly Bartrip is a first-class defender. And I know that there are very few players who don't come through sort of the traditional pathway that get called up for England. But honestly, if you watch her play, her composure, her ability, her reading of the game, she knows when to boot it, when to play it out. She plays with a full heart. She's committed, she's athletic. She's like an all-round centre-back. And an excellent human. So I think she'd make a terrific addition to an England squad. And I'm surprised not to see her being talked about in that context. So that's my little call out of Molly. I know it's a bit late for this round, but it's my call out of Molly Bartrip for England.
Right, let's focus on Arsenal. It was a must-win encounter, wasn't it, away to West Ham on Sunday after a turbulent week in North London. And we covered it briefly last week, didn't we? Because it was only announced, Jonas Eidevall's resignation last Tuesday, just as we were recording the pod. Renée Slagers has stepped in as interim manager. And actually, in her brief time at the helm, she's really steadied the ship, secured back-to-back wins, including a 4-1 victory over Vålerenga in the Champions League midweek, and then followed it up by a 2-0 victory over West Ham. It's been a really difficult week for Arsenal, Tom, but just to kind of update you all on what's been going on, because the last time you heard from us, obviously, it was literally just immediate reaction to the news that broke. But Tom, tell us the latest on the circumstances surrounding Jonas Eidevall's departure, and how is Renée Slagers doing? Could she perhaps have already maybe set herself up for taking the job over full-time herself?
Yeah, well, with a couple of wins, I think Renée has certainly helped steady the ship a little bit, helped kind of keep things calm in what is a difficult week. I think that all of Arsenal's problems won't be sort of solved overnight. In terms of whether Renée Slagers is in the running, from when she's been asked about it, she's been very sort of professional and just not been drawn on that topic at all. I don't get the impression she's really thinking about that. And I don't really think the club would necessarily have had her in mind as a long-term thought. I know they're in no immediate rush to replace Jonas Eidevall. I think they feel they're in quite safe hands with Renée Slagers for the time being. They've got a good sort of interim person there who can really steady the ship well. But so they're not panicking. But I do think at the same time they are quite far along the process. They had, I think, the candidates in mind. I think it's fair to say, but relatively quickly, once Eidevall had resigned, I think they were proactive. I think it's a bit early at this stage to say who's getting the job or who might even be on that list. But what I do think is becoming quite clear from the conversations I'd had is that the people that Arsenal want might be in other jobs already at the moment. So it might take a little bit of time for this situation to be, concluded. It might take a little bit of negotiation between clubs and Arsenal, or it could well be that certain people's seasons need to finish before that they're available to move across to a club like Arsenal. But I can hopefully say more on another pod. But I think what is becoming clear is that Arsenal would rather get the right person than rush to appoint someone who's available today. So it could be a little bit of a wait, but I think they seem very confident that they will get this right and let's not forget that this is a hugely attractive job, right? I think they probably have, but given the attendances that Arsenal are drawing in and therefore the revenue that Arsenal women's team have, it's probably a job with the biggest pulling power in the women's game right now. Globally, I can't think of a club women's job with a bigger pulling power right now than coming to Arsenal. So I think they've got the potential to get whoever they want, and I think that they will probably get their top choice. It just might take a little bit of time for that to resolve.
I've got a question. So in the first 70 minutes of that game against West Ham, I was actually wondering about the players' motivation. So what do you think about in terms of like what's happening when your leaders arguably are on the bench in Leah Williamson and Beth Mead? You don't know what's happening. You've got an interim where is the interim going to stay? Are they not? I don't know. They just didn't look. I know they won, but it didn't look like a very motivated team to me. What do you think about what? Just wondering about motivation when you don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't say it's motivation. like, I think they want to win. It's just the way they've played under Jonas is so ingrained. You know, he was there for 3 to 4 seasons. So I say it's less motivation. It's more that they don't know how to dig themselves out of a hole because they've not been sort of taught how to get through these difficult games against teams that, you know, play in a low block and play quite compact. I think that's what they struggle with. So I think you could say the same about every single game that they've dropped points in recent, this season and last season, in that they just reach a point where they look a little bit idealist. And I think that's the biggest concern about the game against West Ham, was that, yes, they win it, but they're forced to rely on a penalty in the 71st minute. Like, it's a whole period of time where they're still struggling to break down that low block, and they don't break it down, right? Like, they don't actually solve that problem. Yes, it's definitely a penalty, I think, but it's would Stina Blackstenius have converted the chance had, you know, she not been brought down, or found a player that would? I'm not convinced, because they're not really showing the signs that they can actually break through teams like this who are defending really solidly against them. So they get that goal, which sort of gets them around the problem that they're facing, and then West Ham have to come out, and that's when they get the second, because they're then playing a team that's playing a little bit more expansive and giving them a bit more of the room that they need to be able to play against. So I think it's less about like motivation, because I think they want it, right? I don't think they are showing any signs of being sort of frustrated at Jonas going, or you know, kind of wanting change or recognising that something needed to happen, but more that they just don't know what to do in those situations. And I think the substitutes were such a key issue. I thought that it was bold to bring on 4 players at once around the hour mark and just really, really go for it. And I think that was a difference at forcing the penalty and forcing more chances. But they need to be converting against teams that will have basically worked them out, right? Like, have a blueprint for how to defend against them, and are doing it really successfully, and they can't figure it out. And I think it's frustration more than a lack of motivation.
Yeah, Susie mentioned the subs there, and actually, Chris, the introduction of Rosa Kafaji was a game changer for Arsenal. What impact did she have, and are you surprised maybe that we've not seen her very much since she joined the club in the summer?
Well, that's exactly what I thought, actually. And if I think about many of my friends who are Arsenal women fans, they've all been crying out to see her, because you get excited when you sign a player like Rosa Kafaji and then you don't play her. And then she comes on and sort of changes the game. And, you know, scores her first goal, got a big shout out from the fans afterwards as well, which I saw a TikTok, I think, and that was really nice. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly why you buy a player like that, right? It's because she can do things that change games. So, you know, I expect to see her in the team going forward, to be honest, because I think, you know, she's a talent, and that's what she's come there for. So,
quick word on West Ham, Tom. It feels like we've said this on a number of occasions this season and last season. Is there trouble ahead in East London? They haven't won in 14 league matches, and Rhiannon Skinner herself has only won 3 in her last 36, which is a real worry. How much is the pressure mounting on her at the minute?
Well, I think perhaps we just need to be realistic about the budget they've got, the calibre of players that they've got in a league where everyone else is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Like, you know, the pressure's clearly going to be on Rhiannon to get results. They have to start getting results soon. But perhaps I'm inclined to maybe judge them at the end of the November run of fixtures. I think I'm right in saying this, that they've got Tottenham, Leicester and Brighton. If that's wrong, then the producers will tell me off later. But that's a run of 3 games where they will want to get some points. And if they come away from that trio of fixtures with something like 1 point or less, or 2 points or less, and I think there'll be real alarm bells. But I always like to sort of give people a bit of time, give them the fair opportunity, and I think that's a run of games when West Ham will hope to get some results. So let's reserve real judgment on them until we've seen November. But definitely the time is, I think, going to run out for them to get wins, because it was so, Crystal Palace are getting points. Everton got a point of the Emirates. So Leicester have just won a game. So And that trip to Tottenham that West Ham have got next at the start of November, it's a huge game for Tottenham, because for Tottenhm, after that, Tottenham play Man City and Arsenal. The Tottenham will know they need to beat West Ham, otherwise they'll go into a run where they might end up not getting anything in November. So the games coming up are going to be really significant for all those teams in that kind of bottom half. But I certainly think it would be unfair to talk about Ryan losing a job at this stage. I think they need a fair crack of the whip of some of the games where they'll hope to get something in November, I think.
Right, that's it for part one. In part two, we'll round up the rest of the weekend's action and take a look at the international fixtures. Welcome back to part two of the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. Let's continue with the rest of the weekend's Barclays WSL action, shall we? Gareth Taylor's Manchester City came from behind to stay top of the table. It finished Manchester City 2, Aston Villa 1, with Brazil's Gabby Nunes firing Villa in front. But 2 goals in 8 minutes from Lauren Hemp and Jill Roord ensured that Manchester City took all 3 points. Chris, it was Lauren Hemp who epitomised that turnaround for Taylor's side. Brilliant hooked equaliser before setting up Jill Roord for the winner. Just how crucial is she to this City side?
Yeah, I mean, she completely dominated them, and it was an absolute schooling from her. I mean, I forget how young she is, actually. So I think she's made 107 appearances for Manchester City at 24. I mean, Gareth Taylor called her a role model, and I think that's right. I mean, if you look at her work on and off the ball and her talent, it was a wonderfully improvised finish for the goal. And she just works and works and works and works and works. And there's something about that absolute graft with really she's clearly very talented, and I think it was definitely the Lauren Hemp show. I thought she was terrific.
Yeah, she's just brilliant, isn't she? Great off the pitch as well. Susie, it was Manchester City's 3rd comeback in as many games, which is quite remarkable. How much resilience is this side showing this season? Does it make them, as if we didn't think they were true title contenders anyway, but does it make them more so?
Yeah, I mean, there's no better way of looking at a team that is challenging for the title than how they do against teams that they concede 2 or 4 behind to. I think that's been the missing piece for me. That was what was missing for them last season. It's going to be really interesting to see how they do against the big sides. Obviously, they had the draw against Arsenal at the start of the season, but I think that was where they sort of fell down a bit last year, in that, they conceded late on to those sides after taking the lead and stuff. But the characteristics of these performances imply that they could do quite well, that they're a little bit more gritty. It's, obviously brilliant to see Jill Roord's on the score sheet again, and I think she's got a lot of physicality in her and fight in her, and defensive grit as well as attacking threat that really adds that as well. So I think that resilience piece is, I'd say, pretty new to them. I don't think they've necessarily shown that characteristic in recent seasons, and it's quite exciting.
It was a perfect start for Aston Villa, Tom, but they just couldn't finish it off, could they? And it has taken a while for Gabby Nunes to make an appearance for them since joining in the summer, but she showed that she was well worth the money. Yeah,
she took the goal really well, didn't she? A lovely finish, quite clever, getting in front of her marker, and just that's the kind of thing I think Villa fans are really pleased to see from Nunes. But I think it's just a case of probably what Villa need now is they need to win a game. They need to get some confidence. They need to get some belief in what the new manager's trying to do, and nothing will do that like winning a game of football. I think there's still a lot of reasons to be encouraged about some of the things they're doing on the pitch this season. I think they're playing some good football at times. I think, and it will take time for a new manager's ideas to be bedded in. I just perhaps I think what they might find, maybe a little bit like some of the other clubs, is that it is really hard to kick on. It's really hard to take that step from being sort of in a sort of lower bit of mid-table to trying to really kick on and try and challenge to be, say, a top 5 team. It's not easy. So I think they played well at times against Manchester City, but what they just found is that there's a real drive and desire joining on to Man City's quality that's making them really formidable at the moment. So probably a bad time to play Man City, but I wouldn't be panicking if I was Aston Villa fans. Not a dissimilar answer to what I said about West Ham. I think they need a little bit more time to be judged. I probably want to judge Robert De Paul after about 9 or 10 games, but they need to win a game soon, because otherwise just the doubts and the kind of worry will start to creep in, and the best thing that could happen for them if they win a game of football. So let's see how they go on in the next little slot of games, but I wouldn't worry too much if you're an Aston Villa fan at the moment. I think it just needs a little bit more time.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the problem. Aston Villa, one of 3 sides yet to register a win in the WSL this season. Brighton, though, are having a great start to the season. Hard-earned draw against Manchester United in front of a record crowd at the Amex. It finished Brighton 1, Manchester United 1. Grace Clinton opened the scoring. Mark Skinner's side dominated the first half, but Brighton dug in. And Nikita Paris, of course, Nikita Paris hit back to make sure that her side shared the points. Listen, Chris, United were the better side for much of the first half, but they struggled to put the game to bed after taking an early lead. Similar issues, probably, to what we've seen before from them.
Yeah, and I'm not their biggest fan, so I was delighted to see. I really, really enjoyed Nikita Paris's reaction to her goal as well. If she had the time, she would have done a lap of the pitch with swinging her shirt above her head, which I think you see a bit of that sort of players having left Manchester United. It's like they feel sort of liberated from whatever it is that goes on there, and also as a Spurs fan, it's never nice to see the combination of Celine Bizet and Grace Clinton linking up for a goal. So I'm glad that wasn't a winner, frankly. Jokes aside, it's almost frustrating to watch Grace Clinton because what a player. I mean, that finish again was just, it was lovely. She was in the right place, little touch, and she can do all of it. There was one point where she picked the ball up and beat 4 players and then hit the post, I think. And you're like, wow, she really is some player. And it was a privilege to watch her last season. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed Nikita Paris's goal. I enjoyed that one more.
Yeah, let's get a bit more on that, Susie, because Nikita Paris, absolutely brilliant, so passionate anyway, really fired up against her former club. And you actually spoke to her, didn't you, before the game kicked off?
Oh yeah, she was definitely ready for this game, and I think, she's sort of bounced around club to club since leaving Manchester City. Not necessarily got the minutes she would like at any of the clubs she's played at since, and I think, she's showing that when you're a forward, consistency in minutes really, really matters. And she's getting a lot of love from Brighton, which I'm not sure she's had many other places. They really wanted her. She said she felt really, really wanted. And I don't think she's necessarily felt that. I think she's always sort of been an add-on rather than one of the stars. And one of the things she said to me was I thought was really, really interesting. I mean, she really talks about clarity in being key to how well Brighton have clicked this season, and that Vidosic is so good at telling them exactly what he wants from them, where he wants them to be in specific moments, very detailed instructions. And she said she doesn't think there's many coaches in women's football. She said there's a lot of managers but not a lot of coaches, and she said she thinks that's the difference. She said she hadn't had a coach like Dario since Nick Cushing at City, and that there's not that many that dissect the game the way he does. So yeah, she said it's really enjoyable to play under, because you know exactly what's expected from you, whether you're on the pitch, whether you're on the bench. It's easier for your teammates to know exactly where you're going to be on the pitch, because he's got such a clear structure for where he wants players in specific moments. So, but then she also said he's quite individual as well, in that he'll adapt it all for the player on the pitch. So it's not like Michelle Aguiman comes in and has to fit into the Nikita Paris role when she does. They will adapt it for the style of player that she is. And so some really interesting stuff from her about what is making Brighton so potent and look so slick. And she put a lot of credit on Dario Vidosic for the way they're playing and the sort of joy that is coming from their football at the moment.
Liverpool having a strange start to the season. Over on Merseyside, they hosted League newbies Crystal Palace at St Helens Stadium. It finished Liverpool 1, Crystal Palace 1, but Matt Beard got a very frustrated figure after the match. This is what he had to say. We were lucky to get that point, to be honest. I'm disappointed with the whole performance. I think our DNA is work rate, being aggressive, and we were so passive today with and without the ball. A friend of the Guardian Football Weekly, Sunny Rudravajula, has messaged us on X saying, "Hey guys, hope there's no emergency extra recording needed this week. If only you knew, Sunny, it feels like you did. Long story that I won't go into. Just to say, this is Sunny speaking, not me, by the way. I was covering Liverpool Palace, and Palace were excellent. Sangle and, of course, Annabelle Blanchard were very good. I do wonder about Matt Beard's post-match comments. It's tough because it's a few minutes after full time and he lives and breathes it, and it's not the first time he's been so brutally honest. But is it fair? Is desire really the issue? Tom, what do you think? Why are Liverpool struggling to get up to full speed so far this season? And was Matt Beard right to be that honest?
I don't think that's the only issue, but I can understand why Matt Beard would be very, very cross, if he feels that his team aren't exerting themselves 100% of the work rate. Those are kind of the real basic core principles that Matt Beard has always kind of demanded of his sides, and I think a lot of their success last season was built on very high work rate and intensity, and just a huge amount of effort from everybody involved. And I think the way they play football probably also relies upon the whole squad, essentially working at a very high work rate. So I can understand his frustration, and he is a manager who has a very good track record of getting kind of his players to perform above the sum of their parts. And so I think we will see a reaction, I suspect, from the Liverpool players. I don't think it's a case of the players are going to suddenly start disliking Matt Beard and there's going to be troubles. I think they will heed that message, and I think we will see a reaction probably in the next couple of games of them really upping their game, because I think there is more to come from Liverpool. I think they do have a good squad. I just think perhaps, and I can understand why they're frustrated not to have won a home game yet at their new ground at St Helens. But I think that perhaps we just need to remember that they overachieved last year. So probably what we're seeing this year is probably maybe more a realistic return on investment for the budget that Liverpool have operated on for the last few years. What we see now is probably what I would have expected. Last year was probably the outlier in that they really, really overperformed. So that'll be frustrating for Liverpool fans. In the meantime, it'll be frustrating for Matt Beard. But if we're trying to compare them to, say, Brighton, who've invested significantly and signed so many wonderful players in the summer transfer market, they're going to be overtaken. That's just how football works. So what the other point is that Palace are also quite a good side. That's not it's no disgrace to draw to Palace. The more I watch a Crystal Palace, the more I'm not seeing a team that's going down. So there's got to be alarm bells now for so many clubs down there, whether that be West Ham, whether that be Everton, whether that be Villa, who knows? But there must be teams in the bottom half thinking, like, if they assumed that Crystal Palace were going to go straight back down, that they're wrong, and that might not be the case. So Liverpool perhaps shouldn't overreact too much to not beating Crystal Palace. I don't think that's the embarrassment that perhaps people would have thought of a year ago, that you wouldn't beat the newly promoted team. I don't think it's as bad as that. I think Palace are a good team.
Yeah, quick word on Palace, Chris, because it was another battling performance. Katie Sangle getting off the mark against her former club as well. Really important that they pick up these kind of points against the kind of best of the rest teams, if you like.
I think despite shipping a load of goals in their first two games, they look to me like the first promoted team in a while that look like they're going to compete. So exactly as Tom's just said, I think they're not going to be a pushover, and they're not going to be like, oh, it's okay, we're just playing the newly promoted team. They're going to compete. They look, they look decent, and it was inevitable that Katie Stengel was going to score, right? So yeah, no, I mean, and I'm always up for more London derbies, more away games. I don't have to go too far. So, yeah, let's keep them in the league.
Finally, Leicester City earned their first victory under Amandine Mikel away at Walton Hall Park. It finished Everton 0. Leicester City won thanks to a first-half strike from Yuki Mamiki. Amandine Mikel said she felt stressed until the last second. I know how you feel, Amandine, against an Everton side that threatened at times but continued to lack a clinical edge in front of goal. Susie, do you reckon this result can kickstart the Foxes' season?
I mean, they badly needed 3 points, especially given the sort of the games they've got coming up. I mean, in the next 5 games, it's only really West Ham that you think, well, they've got a chance, because they've got Brighton, Man United, Man City and Chelsea as the other of those 5, taking you almost up to Christmas. So it's a really, really big ask that they take many points from that. So they have to be getting them against teams like Leicester, like West Ham, when they come about. So really important, I think, going into that really, really tough run.
Right, you guys know how much I love the Championship, and there was more drama this weekend in the final round of games before the international break. Game of the weekend, arguably, Charlton salvaged a point against 10-player Newcastle United thanks to 2 injury time goals from Katie Bradley and Kaylee Barson. It finished 3-3 after a Shania Hales hat-trick gave the Magpies a comfortable lead, but Amber Keegan-Stobbs' second yellow card helped change the course of the match. Birmingham City maintained their position at the top of the table with a solid 2-0 victory over Southampton, thanks to an own goal from Megan Collett and a finish from Lily Agg. Elsewhere, Sunderland earned a 2-1 win over neighbours Durham. Bristol City beat Portsmouth 1-0, and Sheffield United earned their first win of the season against Blackburn Rovers. Right, the first international break of the season is upon us. 3 months they've had off, the Lionesses, although they kind of haven't, because they've had obviously domestic football first of all, but we haven't seen them in action. They're going to be playing Germany in a friendly at Wembley on Friday night. Serena Wiegmann, though, without Lauren James, she's out for a few weeks with a calf injury. Tom, you mentioned earlier on that you've been up at St George's Park. How are the Lionesses shaping up? What are they going to look to be getting out of this window?
Well, Georgia Stanway says that the Euro starts here for England. I think this is all about preparation for the next summer's tournament. I think England qualifying, automatically means they get this opportunity now to use these 4 friendlies coming up to really try and, work on their style of play and get things better for next summer, which they do need to do, because let's not forget that the Nations League campaign, wasn't particularly impressive at all the time. Lauren James being out is a big blow. Not just for these games, but we would expect her now to be out for the USA and Switzerland game as well, with the 5-6 week time frame that Sonia Bonpastor has given, which is a really big blow. But what I think we'll see in these games, I want to see Grace Clinton and Jess Park playing the way they've been playing for their clubs. They've both been so good this season. So here's to that, hopefully coming to the fore. And I think that's really exciting competition for places in midfield.
Plenty at stake for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland over the next fortnight. They look to keep their dream of reaching Euro 2025 alive. Wales travel to Slovakia, Scotland to Hungary and Northern Ireland to Croatia in the first leg of the playoffs round 1. Susie, what do you make of all their chances? I know we are going to go more in depth on this next week.
Well, in theory, they're all winnable games for them. I mean, if you look at where they rank in the FIFA World Rankings compared to the teams they're playing, they should get through. They should get through round 1. It's round 2 that I'm more worried about. I think that's when it steps up a gear and becomes really tricky. But on paper, they should do well in these games. And I think there'll be serious disappointment if they don't.
Right. Meanwhile, England's under-17s have hit the world stage in the under-17 FIFA Women's World Cup in the Dominican Republic. The group stage is underway, and Natalie Henderson's side have secured a place in the quarterfinals after wins over Kenya and Mexico, the latter in very dramatic circumstances. With English youth football continuing to thrive, we've decided to catch up with Kay Cossington, the FA's Women's Technical Director, to find out more about the work the FA are doing, both to increase the pool of talent coming through and to provide a pathway through which young English players can thrive. Kay, it's lovely to have you with us. How are you?
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
Excellent. Listen, obviously the England under-17s are out in the Dominican Republic, booked themselves a spot in the quarterfinals on Sunday. It was quite a game though, wasn't it? What did it show you about this group coming through that?
Yeah, I mean, we know that we've got an extremely talented group out there in the Dominican, and we saw that from the European Championships back in May in Sweden. I think they're an incredible group that have the potential to have a bright future. And I think what we saw against Mexico typifies the importance of these tournaments, really. I mean, the game had absolutely everything, and experiences that some of these players won't face back in club football. So I think for them, it's such a great learning opportunity, playing against different opponents in different styles and ways, and knockout football and is really important for their development.
Yes, I mean, it's the first World Cup, under-17 World Cup England have been in since 2016. Like, how crucial is appearing on the world stage to these players' development individually?
Yeah, it's so different. As we know, playing in the European Championship is a massive step up playing against world opposition. And we spoke about this with the players just before they left. They're already won by actually going out there. And what I mean by that is they're winning through experiences. We talk about players loading their backpacks as they go through the pathway, making sure they can put as many different experiences in their backpack as they can to prepare them for the senior team when they and if they reach that level. So playing against different opponents, being so far away from home, different time zones, different types of crowds, different pressures of knockout World Cup football. I mean, it has absolutely everything, as we've already seen just within these two group games. So there's so much learning for them that but regardless of what happens in terms of results, they're winning every single day by some of the learning experiences that they're having.
I really love that analogy, filling their backpacks with stuff. You can almost just visualize it, can't you? And obviously, this is becoming an annual tournament from next year, isn't it? The Under-17s World Cup, which is just a massive opportunity for these youngsters to get more consistent exposure to world football.
Yeah, it is. And that comes with challenges too, because as you would have seen, we've had to run two teams concurrently. So one under-17 team has been qualifying again in round one for the European Championships, and another under-17 team are going out to the Dominican. And it's a brilliant problem to have, that's for sure. But it just takes a little bit more detailed planning and preparation, but also an acknowledgement of how we're developing players in the right way that's right for them. For some of the players that are in the Dominican can still play in the under-17 European Championships this season. But for their kind of development and their stretch, we made a decision to send them on. So I think that's the brilliant part of it for next year, is that we can push and pull dependent on what the needs of the players are. And that's really important throughout the pathway. It's about the right player at the right time and the right development around them as they progress through this system.
Yeah, those numbers of games is huge for the development. You've been part of a really concerted effort to develop the England pathway. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that has progressed over the last few years to the point that we are at now?
Yeah, for sure. I think I just mentioned the kind of word bespoke, and I think that really emphasizes how we changed the philosophy of the pathway. We used to have a one size fits all. And we used to think that an academy model was the right way to go. And how you've now seen us progress the pathway over the past 4 years is the introduction of a different tiered system. So we wanted to ensure that our talent ID structure and strategy was far-reaching. We wanted to make sure that we were accessible and inclusive. And we've seen that, just without giving lots of stats, but we wanted to double the amount of players that were entering into the pathway. Our ambition was 4,000 players. We've already hit 6,000 players. So we're finding players that are coming into our pathway far and wide, onshore, but also offshore. There's players that are out in the Dominican representing the 17s that don't live in England. So we're now actually attracting English qualified players that are playing overseas as well, which is fantastic. So with the Discover My Talent, with the emerging talent centres and the progress of the professional game academies, the bespoke way that we are managing those with club by club, player to player. And on top of that, the regional programme, which I can't stress enough is so important to be able to help players and their families actually progress with their development. And that's that bit in between their club football and international football. So how can we layer up the help and support for them at crucial times through exams and things like that, that gives them the best possible chance. So I think there's some of the real bespoke differences that we've seen over the past few years, but also I think we need to talk to the investment of staff. You can put all the programs in the world, but you have to have the right people that work with the players that are able to actually make the magic happen. And I think we've done that. We've invested heavily in our talent system. We have numerous staff now that work in Discover My Talent on a regional basis, scouts, analysts, talent managers. We've really invested in that space because for me, unless we get the entry point right, it makes it really difficult a little bit later on.
Yeah. What would you say have been your biggest achievements so far, and what obstacles have you still got to overcome?
Well, I think achievements, the last 4 years has been incredible. And we done a review here for the women's technical division just a few months back on the last strategy cycle, which was called Piccadilly to Podium. And that was very much around how we felt like 4 years ago we were standing in the middle of Piccadilly Circus and how on earth were we going to get a team to podium. And so that's the journey we feel like we've been on. And we've done a bit of a review on that. And when you look at the success of the talent pathway in terms of numbers and playing environments and numbers of players coming in, that's a success. When you look at the development teams, you look at the 17s and 19s qualifying for the finals, both of them for the first time in a long time, that's a success. The 17s going to the first World Cup, as you say, since 2016, that's a success. The 23s unbeaten in the whole season in the Euro League, that's a success. And then let's top that off with a European Championship and a first ever World Cup for the seniors. So there's lots to actually celebrate in that 4-year period. But we want to move on, and we now talk about our next strategy is called Winning Together. And this is actually 24 to 28 is how do we do this collectively together as a whole game and an ecosystem? Let's take another big, brave step forward because we want to keep winning on and off the pitch. We want to keep changing the world with girls and women's football. We truly believe we can do that. Challenges we've still got to overcome. The under 23s would love a competition in that age group. We think as the senior game and the demands get even higher, the 23s are going to become even more important. So to have some kind of competition, UEFA, FIFA competition in the 23s is really important. The other piece for us is we can do so much work in the talent system to find, identify talent, confirm talent and develop talent, but they need somewhere to play. So the EQP debate and discussion is something that we always need to tackle for two reasons, really. I think, we want to ensure that top talent in this country has opportunity to play because you can only get better by playing. But we also want to continue to give every little girl in this country a dream that they can be a professional footballer. So we always talk about seeing it is believing it. Well, we need to ensure that that is still current in the top end of our game, that these young girls can visualise their pathway and their journey and I guess their role models and their aspirations. So still lots of work to do, but let's also celebrate the work that we've done.
You've gone backwards. Okay, Winning Together is a much worse name than Piccadilly to Podium. I'm
not sure how we would have beat Piccadilly to Podium. I think
that is true. How much has increasing competitive fixtures been a priority in recent years, particularly for the under 23s?
Yeah, it is huge. We talk about competitive balance a lot in any talent system, player development system. The competition program is vital to be able to give players on a weekly basis and then a regular basis at international football good competitive opportunities. They need to have experiences of winning, of losing, of drawing, of knockouts, of winning heavily and losing heavily, and all of those going down to 10 players. And obviously they've experienced that in the World Cup already. So, all of those experiences come from competition. And you can't replicate that in a training environment. So we talk about training, competition, coach. So all of those things are really fundamentally important in the player's journey. So the bits that we can control in terms of the international programs, you will see that we're playing against great opposition majority of the time now because we want players to understand what the demands of the game are at the top end, and we have aspirations to push the dial even more. I challenge the coaches here a lot around the age group teams as well, around playing high level grade A opposition on a regular basis. And sometimes people get the result and they think, oh, well, perhaps we're not doing so well. We didn't win against X country, but for us, it's about testing ourselves against the very best. And obviously with the 15s and 16s, there's a high volume and turnover of players. And that's only right too, because we want to give as many players that opportunity, because that's when you see them at their best, when they're playing against great opposition. So we make no apology for that. We want to play against good opposition. We want to test ourselves regularly, and we want to expose players to high levels of competition on a regular basis.
Obviously, the aim is to give the under 23s the best opportunity to be able to break into the seniors. What more can be done apart from just the competitive fixtures to try and do that?
I think it's the bespoke nature that we try to approach the 23s with in their IDPs, etc. It's such a crucial point of the pathway and the journey for them. They're transitioning. Some of them are out on loan, or many of them can be out on loan. Some of them are playing in very different environments. Some of them are getting playing minutes. Some of them are not. So their IDPs become really, really important. And that collaboration with the player and the club is essential for making sure that they stay, their mindset is right and they stay on task and focused, because it can feel like a long journey at times when you're in the 23s, and the aim is to get to the seniors as quickly as you can, right? You don't want to keep them in the 23s forever, but what we're blessed with is a really great depth of players in the senior team with a great age profile. So sometimes, you have to be patient. You have to be able to just keep on working at the things that are going to improve you as a player, on and off the pitch. And when your time comes, it's important that we make sure they're ready to take that chance. And I think we're also very fortunate with our coach that she invests in young players. As you've seen already, she sees the importance of bringing those players in. And I think going back to the Euros, it's no coincidence that we see some of the players that we did that come on and made impact in the tournament, because they're good players and they were ready for it when they went into that environment. And that's a responsibility that we all have, the clubs, the federation, coaches, is to give these players in that age group the best possible chance of transition. Transition is really important, age group to age group, regardless of whether you're a 15 going to the 16s, 16s to 17s, 17s to 19s. They're all big deals, actually, to those players at that moment in time. So we always talk about this jump from the 19s, 20s, 23s to seniors. But talk to one of the kids in the under 17s when she's doing 12 GCSEs, when she's away at European Championships and she's trying to then make a transition to the 19s. That's a big deal too. So we do focus a lot on transitions of players and how we can best support them in that.
I keep going to call you Faye, and I think Kay and Faye would be a great children's presenting duo.
Kay, that'd be great fun.
That's distracted me slightly.
I'm sure my children would love that.
Kay, you mentioned a lot of the sort of different elements of the pathway and how you bring players in and identify talent. There have been questions over diversity in the women's game. What's happening behind the scenes to help diversify that talent pool and accessibility to the sport in general?
Yeah, so I think that was definitely one of the focuses around the revamp and the progression of the talent pathway, and what we're seeing already with the work done through the ETCs, 73 different playing environments, of which majority of the players now can get to an ETC within 32 minutes. So that's a big difference, because that means that it's much more accessible. Our regional programs now, our talent programs in each of the 5 different regions work bespokely for the needs of those communities in those regions. So what that looks like in the North East will look different to the London South East. It will look extremely different to the Southwest, for example. So we're meeting the needs of the communities. We're working with local authorities. We're working with leagues. We're working with 3v3 UK. We're working with local governments to make sure we can put programs on where we take the game to them. So, we want to ensure there's no barriers. We talk about removing barriers. That's how we approach this with the talent pathway. Identify the barriers. For example, barriers might be cost. So we've done everything we can to reduce cost, and in most circumstances, remove cost. So there's no cost barriers to people coming along. Travel and transport was a barrier. We've removed that. Players can get within a talent site in some way, shape or form within 32 minutes. We give out bursaries, hardship funds and bursaries to players that may well be struggling financially in their families at the next stage of the pathway. So we try to look at all the barriers that we think might be a challenge, and one by one we're ticking those barriers off. And what we're finding from the numbers that you can see from what we've provided recently is that the diversity of our teams is massively increasing, and you only need to look at the regional programs, the under 15s and the under 16s to evidence that. When I talk about diversity, I think we spoke before, it's diversity in ethnicity, yes, but it's also diversity in social economics as well. So, these players that are coming from different IMD areas, it's really important that we recognise that as well in terms of diversity. We want to open the doors and we want to be accessible to every single talented girl in this country, regardless of what the barrier is. And that's where the people come in. So our talent managers can help individual players and their families provide solutions to whatever barriers they may be facing. And for me, that's the magic, because the program is the program, but the nuance is the individual people and their families that are within that. And I think that's where we're starting to see real difference.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Just finally, Kay, you've got a new women's and girls strategy coming out soon. Listen, I know that you're not going to be able to tell us very much about it in terms of the contents, but how is that going to continue driving what you're doing already forward?
Yeah, I think, again, we talk about turning the dial again. We need to keep stepping forward in this space. And I think the new 4-year strategy, you won't be surprised with any of the content when it's shared, is, we want to keep moving forward, whether that's with equal access, whether that's with tournament preparation, talent pathways and systems in that space, whether that's with our coaching and our refereeing and making sure that those golden threads that go right the way through the game continue to serve the game at the highest levels, as well as right the way through from grassroots. So I think when you see it, it's another opportunity for us to step forward and to progress things. And I think we're doing that in each of our different domains. And I think when you see the strategy as a whole, I think we're all excited that it's another 4 years of great football and great development and great activity to push the game on again. The main bit I think that we'll all talk about in the next 4-year plan, and we talk about it here within the women's technical division strategy, is how we protect the game, how we protect the uniqueness of women's football. Like, I truly believe, someone that's lived and breathed it my whole life, is it's special. And there's a special narrative to the women's game. There's a special uniqueness to the women's game. We have our own identity as the women's game, and we should use that as a super strength. And I think we've used that as a super strength to get results, to build teams, to get connectivity of players and staff. And we all need to use it as an ecosystem to continue to drive the game forwards and protect the identity of who we are.
Brilliant. I'm very much looking forward to it. When's it out?
31st of October. We have so many different strategies. 31st of October is when it's out.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Kay, it's been an absolute pleasure. Lovely to see you.
You too. Thanks, guys.
Right. Elsewhere, it was announced yesterday, over 100 women's footballers have signed an open letter urging FIFA to drop Aramco, the Saudi oil company, as a sponsor. Football's governing body announced the partnership earlier this year, giving the company sponsorship rights to the 2026 Men's World Cup and 2027 Women's World Cup. Players from 24 countries, including Viviana Miedema and Niamh Charles, have called the deal a punch in the stomach and asked FIFA to drop the sponsorship on humanitarian and environmental grounds. FIFA told the BBC that they value their partnership with the company and reinvest the money into women's football at all levels. Layla Astley has sent us a message on X. How are you feeling about players petitioning against Saudi oil giants whilst playing for other Middle East oil giants? That is a good point. What did you make of this move from the players, Chris?
I'm all for athlete activism. So I think sort of a collective action, if you feel strongly about something, is really important. So I don't think it's a solo act. I think if there are other things that other players care about or that other people care about, then, we should go out and talk about that as well. There isn't just one thing we should talk about. And I think the other thing is that this is a specific thing that's going to affect where they play, as that they're going to be involved in it. And so you have a direct line to a governing body to do something there. So yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me for any athlete activism, frankly.
Susie, what are your thoughts?
these are really complex issues, and it's really great to see players speaking out on it so eloquently and taking a stand for the things they they care about. I think there's obviously huge issues with connections to Saudi Arabia given their human rights record, their lack of rights for women and LGBTQ plus people. A lot is made over sort of changes that have been made and improvements for women in recent years. But when you look at some of the, kind of statistics from major human rights organisations and, some of the kind of, very personal accounts that they put out there, those changes in reality have done very, very little for women in the country. Obviously the issues affecting women would keenly affect women's footballers. So they're big problems. I think the environment is a really, really great thing to take up. The Guardian doesn't take any advertising money from oil companies. So there's different ways you can take a stand on the environment. Players have spoken out about the sort of long flights, to Australia and things for friendlies and stuff in the past. They've spoken about things like veganism and the impact of meat production on the planet. They've spoken about the impact of flights for international tournaments. So this isn't an issue that's new to them either. It's one that they've raised consistently before, and it's I just think it's hugely inspiring to see so many people come together to say something as a collective and use their voice collectively.
Sorry, this is a little bit of a gear change, but Tom, you've been covering some exciting news around Bristol City and their new women's football strategy. What can you share with us?
Yeah, this is like no women's football club strategy that I've ever read before, actually. There's it's striking that it doesn't have a long list of trophies they want to win or where they want to be in the WSL, and they're not saying we want to be a top 6 club by X year. What the targets are, which are numerous in this document, is around developing young players, having a player in every England youth team, having set numbers of players getting through to their first team from the academy every season. And essentially what they want to be, what they say they want to be, is sort of the destination of choice for young English players. And they're saying that one of the reasons for that, they told me that they have sold Naomi Lazelle for a 6-figure sum to Man City in the summer, which for them was the first time they felt they'd been really rewarded for developing a player financially and properly compensated. So they now feel that if they develop young players, they can every now and then sell one on to a bigger club, for enough money to then keep on doing it and keep funding the academy. And I think that's a really interesting gear change. And now we have a club who feel that there are big enough transfer fees to justify that. So I really admire what they're doing. They almost sort of, reading their document, almost felt like they had a duty to the women's game to develop lionesses and develop players. So it was a really interesting read, and I think it'd be good to see how it goes over the next few years.
Right, brilliant stuff, everyone. Tom, see you at Wembley.
Lovely to speak to you. Take care.
Bye, Chris. Hope to see you on Friday.
Oh, you too.
Susie, I'll see you imminently.
Yep, and I am excited to see your face at Wembley in person. It's been a long time.
Keep having your say by sending in your questions via X or emailing us at womensfootballweekly@theguardian.com. And as ever, a reminder to sign up for our bi-weekly women's football newsletter. All you need to do is search Moving the Goalposts Sign Up. The Guardian Women's Football Weekly is produced by Sophie Downey and Silas Gray. Music composition was by Laura Iredale. Our executive producer is Sal Ahmad.
This is The Guardian.